Namaskaram friends. So in today's discussion I am going to talk about five very important issues which are in news recently. And these issues are: first one is incremental capital output ratio. I am going to talk about ICOR, okay, and its relation with in the economy related to production of any product in a output. Second one is related to the trading of gold in India. Okay, so India adopted which types of trading in the gold. In third section I am going to talk about low I'm sorry in third section I am going to talk about coal, production of coal in India, and which state have a large number of coal mines. Fourth one is I am going to talk about Lok Adalat, okay, its role in settling the dispute and working as a alternate dispute resolution mechanism. And in fifth one I am going to talk about Board for Financial Supervision, okay, and also role of RBI in this regard. So let's discuss the first topic of today's discussion: incremental capital output ratio, or simply you can call it as a ICOR. So the ICOR is the amount of capital required to produce one unit of output. That means, for example, let's our output is a car. So how much money or how much capital is required to produce one unit or one car? The higher the ICOR, the less efficient we are in the use of capital. Yes, this is true. If we required producing, let's say, if we require, you can say, 5 lakh money to producing work one car, and in the next phase we require 10 lakh of money to producing just one car. So when ICOR increases, when capital is increases, we are less efficient in utilizing the capital, and it is we are not economical or not competitive in the market. ICOR is determined by a variety of factors, okay, including technology. Okay, by the use of technology we can reduce the ICOR. Skill of manpower: if manpower is a skill, we, you can say, in a less time we produce things, and in this manner we reduce the ICOR. Managerial competence: when we managerial competence is good, we manage things in a better manner, and in this manner also we reduce the ICOR. And also macroeconomic policy: that means policy of the government related to FDI, related to the laws regulation in the special economic zone, SEZ, and other tasks like macroeconomic policy also. So technology, skill of manpower, managerial competence, and macroeconomic policy are a variety of factors which determine the ICOR. And thus the delay in the completion of a project: if the in a completion of any project delay happen, that means it require more time. And we know that when we take a loan, we pay interest on the loan based on the time. So if the project is halted and require more time, that means we have to give more interest. That means our capital requirement to producing one unit of any product require a more capital. Lack of complementary investment in the related sector: let's say investment is not going on, that means we have not more money to invest in that field, and so we are suffer from production and output. And the non-availability of critical unit can also lead to the rise in IOCR. Okay, if critical units, or let's say if some units of producing a car is not available, so non-availability of critical output also delay time, and delay time we lost more money, or high ICOR is occur. So we understand, if we want to reduce the ICOR, we have to improve the technology, skilling the manpower, managerial competence increase, and also macroeconomic policy must be in our favor. Otherwise, delays in competition of project, lack of complementary investment in related sector, and the non-availability of critical input increase the ICOR. So I hope you understand the role of ICOR in the economy. Now we are going to solve one question based on ICOR. Consider the following statement regarding incremental capital output ratio, ICOR. First one is the ICOR is the amount of capital required to produce one unit of output. Yes, statement 1 is correct. Statement 2 is the lower the ICOR, the less efficient we are in the use of capital. No, this one is wrong. The higher the ICOR, the less efficient we are in the use of capital. So statement 2 is wrong. Statement 3 is reducing the cost of capital helps in reducing the ICOR. Yes, when the cost of capital reduces, we are reducing the ICOR also, but because it requires less money to produce one unit of good, one unit of output. So statement 1 and 3 is correct. Just check which option is correct. Option A is 1 only, option B is 1 and 2, option C is 1 and 3, option D is 2 and 3. So option C is correct, 1 and 3 only. So I hope you understand important point related to ICOR. Now we are moving to the next topic called exchange of current how India traded in the gold in a current circumstances. So India currently has traded only in gold derivative and gold ETF. There are many mechanisms through which you can trade in a gold. So currently India has traded only in the gold derivative and gold ETFs, unlike several other countries which have spot exchanges for physical trade in gold. Okay, so other country, if trade is gold is happening, so currently India is traded in gold with the help of two mechanisms called gold derivative and gold ETFs, but other countries are using the mechanism called spot exchanges for physical trade in good. That means they physically trade in the good with the help of spot exchanges. So remember, very very important. Now it a very small topic. Now we are going to solve one question based on it. Question is, India currently has trading of gold using gold derivative. First statement is gold derivative, second is gold ETF, third is spot exchanges for physical trade in gold. So first one is wrong. First one is right. India traded in gold derivative. Second one is also right. India traded in gold ETF. Third one is wrong, because spot exchanges for physical trade in gold is done by other countries, not by the India. So statement 1 and 2 is correct. Just check which statement is correct. Option is correct. Option 1 is 1 only, B is 1 and 2, C is 2 and 3, D is 1, 2 and 3. So option B is correct, 1 and 2 only, gold derivative as well as gold ETFs. Okay, now we are move on to the third question called coal mines in India, or you can say coal deposits. So coal deposits are primarily found in eastern and southern central India. When you look at the map, in eastern India as well in the southern central India, most of the coal deposits are present, like in the state of Odisha, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. So these three states accounted for almost 70% of the total known coal reserves in India. Okay, so total whatever number of total coal reserves are the present in India, 70% of it is situated in the state of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh as well as Odisha. India is the world's second largest coal producer. Okay, remember, we are the world's second largest coal producer. Coal mines in the state can be allocated to different states for its extraction and use. So if coal mines are present in different states, so central government allocate coal mine in a, let's say in a state of Jharkhand, coal mines are allocated to different states, like state of Tamil Nadu, state of Andhra, state of Maharashtra, to extract and use the resources of coal. Okay, so I hope you understand the important point related to coal deposits and coal reserve. Now we are going to solve one question based on it. Consider the following statement. India is the largest producer of coal in the world. No, India is the second largest producer of coal in the world. So statement 1 is wrong. Statement 2 is Jharkhand, Odisha and Chhattisgarh account for almost 70% of the total known coal reserve in India. Yes, statement 2 is correct. Statement 3, according to the present rules, coal mines in a state can be allocated to different states for its extraction and usage. Yes, statement 3 is also correct. That means statement 2 and statement 3 is correct. Statement 1 is wrong. Just check which option is correct. A is 1 only, B is 1 and 3, C is 2 and 3, D is 1 and 2. So we know that 2 and 3 is correct. That means option C is correct. Now let's move on to the next topic called Lok Adalat. In earlier video I talked about it, but in this video a dimension of Lok Adalat is completely different. Something is similar, but we are touching altogether a new dimension into it. The word Lok Adalat means people's court. Okay, as the name suggests, Lok Adalat. Lok means people, Adalat means court. It is a Hindi term. So the word Lok Adalat means people's court. This system is based on Gandhian principle. Okay, Gandhian principle, that means there are many principles write down by the Gandhian or followed by the Gandhi. So people term it as a Gandhian principle. That means you resolve your dispute not going to the court but through other mechanism. That's why they call it as a Gandhian principle. It is one of the component of ADR, that means alternate dispute resolution system. So three important point. It is people's court based on Gandhian principle as well as a component of ADR. Next point is the Lok Adalat is a forum where the cases or dispute. It is a forum where cases or dispute which are pending in a court or which are at a pre-legislation stage. Pre-legislation stage means not yet brought before a court. So any dispute, any cases which are pending in a court or at a pre-litigation stage are compromised or settled in an amicable manner in the Lok Adalat. So remember, it is a forum where dispute cases are resolved in an amicable manner, and cases included are which are before the court or in a pre-litigation stage. Next point is the first Lok Adalat camp in the post-independence era. Remember, after 1947, in the post-independence era, first Adalat camp was organized in the Gujarat in 1982. In 1982, in the state of Gujarat, first Lok Adalat is, I can say, organized after independence era, after the post-independence era. The institution of Lok Adalat has been given statutory status under the Legal Services Authority Act 1987. So remember, there is an act which give statutory status to the Lok Adalat. So if question come, Lok Adalat is have a not statutory banking, it is wrong. It is has a statutory banking under the Act of Legal Services Authority Act 1987. So remember, 1982 it is first organized, and 1987 it got a legal status. A Lok Adalat shall have jurisdiction to determine and to arrive at a compromise or settlement between the parties to a dispute in respect of. Okay, so Lok Adalat have a jurisdiction to determine and arrive at a compromise or settlement between the two parties in respect of. First is any case pending before any court. If any case is pending before court, so it is under the jurisdiction of the Lok Adalat to compromise and settle the case between the two parties, or any matter which is falling within the jurisdiction of any court and is not brought under before such court. So if case is pending before the court, or if any case is not yet come to any court, is both types of cases are under the jurisdiction of Lok Adalat, and Lok Adalat in these cases compromise and settle a dispute between the two parties. So I hope you understand the whole idea of Lok Adalat, and now we are going to solve one question based on Lok Adalat. Consider the following statement regarding Lok Adalat. Statement 1 is, the system of Lok Adalat is based on Gandhian principle. Yes, statement 1 is correct. Statement 2 is, the institution of Lok Adalat has non-statutory status. No, it got statutory status in 1987 under the Legal Services Authority Act. So statement 2 is wrong. Statement 3 is, the cases which are pending in a court or which are at a pre-litigation stage are settled in an amicable manner. Yes, statement 1 and statement 3 is correct. Just check which option is correct. A is 2 only, B is 1 and 2, C is 2 and 3, D is 1 and 3. So we know that 1 and 3 is correct, 2 is wrong, because Lok Adalat has a statutory backing. Now we are moving on to our last topic called Board for Financial Supervision. Okay, so the Reserve Bank of India performs the supervisory function under the guidance of the Board for Financial Supervision. So under the BFS, RBI RBI performs its supervisory function and the guidance of the BFS. So under the guidance of BFS, RBI perform the supervisory function. The board was constituted in November 1994. Board for Financial Supervision is constituted in November 1994 as a committee of the Central Board of Directors of the Reserve Bank of India under the Reserve Bank of India Board for Financial Supervision Regulation 1994. Okay, so remember, this board is constituted in 1994 under the Reserve Bank of India Board for Financial Supervision Regulation 1994, and committee, in this committee members are the Central Board of Director of the RBI. So very important points. Okay, VFS, RBI as well as RBI Board of Financial Supervision Regulation 1994, and number of in this committee members are Central Board of Director of the RBI. The primary objective of BFS is to undertake consolidated supervision of the financial sector. Okay, so primary objective of BFS is to undertake consolidated supervision of the financial sector, comprising these financial sector are like scheduled commercial and cooperative banks. Banks of this category or fall into it: all India financial institution, local area banks, small finance banks, payment banks, credit information companies, non-banking financial companies, and primary dealer. So all these types of financial sector, supervision on all this financial sector is the objective of the BFS. The board is constituted by co-opting 4 directors from the central board as a member and is chaired by the governor. So remember, the board is chaired by the governor, and this board is constituted by co-opting 4 directors from the central board as a member. Okay, so as a member, 4 director is constituted and is chaired by the governor. The deputy governor of the Reserve Bank are ex officio member. Okay, and one deputy governor. Traditionally, the deputy governor in charge of supervision. Okay, deputy governor is traditionally, the deputy governor in charge of supervision is nominated as the vice chairman of the board. So remember, board is chaired by the governor and vice chairman of the board is deputy chairman, and traditionally deputy governor is the vice chairman of the board. So I hope you understand the BFS, role of RBI, who chair it, and how in committee who are the member who are forming this committee. Okay, which one at which year it is constituted, and what is the backing, or you can say regulation under which it is created. So I hope you understand the whole idea of BFS, RBI, as well as RBI, Board of Financial Supervision, regulated 1994, and financial sector which are come under its supervision, as well as this committee is chaired by governor as well as by the, and vice chairman of this committee is the you can say deputy governor. So now we are going to solve one question based on it. Consider the following statement regarding board for financial supervision. First one is, the Reserve Bank of India perform the supervisory function under the guidance of the board for financial supervision, that means BFS. Yes, statement 1 is correct. Statement second is, it undertakes supervision of scheduled commercial and cooperative banks, small financial banks and payment banks. Yes, statement 2 is also correct. Statement 3 is, the board is chaired by the deputy governor of RBI. No, the board is chaired by the governor of RBI. That means statement 3 is wrong. Statement 1 and 2 is correct. Just check which option is correct. A is 1 only, B is 1 and 2, C is 2 and 3, D is 1 and 3. That means option B is correct. 1 and 2 only. 3 is wrong because it is chaired by the governor. So I hope you understand the whole topic of discussion in today's discussion lecture. And this one is, first one is ICOR, second one is trade of gold in the Indian market, third one is, or you can say third one is coal deposit, fourth one is Lok Adalat, and fifth one is BFS, or you can say Board for Financial Supervision. So I hope you love this discussion, enjoy this discussion, and gain some perspective, some knowledge out of it. So namaskaram, thank you.